Imperial Purple by H.L. Mencken. Most of the rewards of the presidency in these days have come to be very trashy. The president continues, of course, to be an eminent man, but only in the sense that Jack Dempsey, Lindbergh, Babe Ruth, and Henry Ford have been eminent men. He sees little of the really intelligent and amusing people of the country. Most of them, in fact, make it a sort of point of honor to avoid him. His time is put in mainly with shabby politicians and other such designing fellows, in brief, with rogues and ignoramuses. When he takes a little holiday, his customary companions are vermin that no fastidious man would consort with. Dr. Harding, forced to entertain them, resorted to poteen as an analgesic. Dr. Coolidge loaded them aboard the Mayflower and then fled to his cabin, took off his vest and shirt, and went to sleep. Dr. Hoover hauled them to the Rapidan at 60 miles an hour and back at 80 or 90. The honors that are heaped upon a president are seldom of a kind to impress and content a civilized man. People send him turkeys, possums, pieces of wood from the Constitution, goldfish, carved peach kernels, models of the state capitals of Wyoming and Arkansas, and pressed flowers from the Holy Land. Once a year, some hunter in Montana or Idaho sends him 20 pounds of bear steak, usually collect. It arrives in high estate and has to be fed to the White House dog. He receives 20 or 30 chain prayer letters every day and fair copies of 40 or 50 sets of verse. Colored clergymen send him illustrated Bibles, madstones, and boxes of lucky powders, usually accompanied by applications for appointment as collector of customs at New Orleans, Mobile, or Wilmington, North Carolina, or as Register of the Treasury. His public rewards come in the form of LL.D.s from colleges eager for the publicity, and on the same day, others precisely like it are given to a champion lawn tennis player, a banker known to be without heirs of his body, and a general in the army. No one ever thinks to give him any other academic honor. He is never made a Lit.D., a D.D., an S.T.D., a D.D.S., or a J.U.D., but always an LL.D. Dr. Hoover, to date, has 30 or 40 such degrees. He apparently knows as little about law as a court catchpole, but he is more solidly legum doctor than Blackstone or Pufendorf. The health of a president is watched very carefully, not only by the vice president, but also by medical men detailed for the purpose by the Army or Navy. These medical men have high-sounding titles and perform the duties of their office in full uniform with swords on one side and stethoscopes on the other. The diet of their imperial patient is rigidly scrutinized. If he eats a few peanuts, they make a pother. If he goes in for some steamed hard crabs at night, washed down by what passes in Washington for malt liquor, they complain to the newspapers. Every morning they look at his tongue, take his pulse and temperature, determine his blood pressure, and examine his eye grounds and his knee jerks. The instant he shows the slightest sign of being upset, they clap him into bed, post Marines to guard him, and put him on a regimen fit for a Trappist, and issue bulletins to the newspapers. When a president goes traveling, he never goes alone, but always with a huge staff of secretaries, Secret Service agents, doctors, nurses, and newspaper reporters. Even so stingy a fellow as Dr. Coolidge had to hire 2 whole Pullman cars to carry his entourage. The cost, to be sure, is borne by the taxpayers, but the president has to put up with the company. As he rolls along, thousands of boys rush out to put pennies on the track, and now and then one of them loses a finger or a toe, and the train has to be backed up to comfort his mother, who, it usually turns out, cannot speak English. When the train arrives anywhere, All the town boors and scoundrels gather to greet the chief magistrate, and that night he has to eat a bad dinner and listen to 3 hours of bad speeches. The president has less privacy than any other American. Thousands of persons have the right of access to him, beginning with the British ambassador and running down to the secretary of the Republican County Committee of Zybeck County, South Dakota. Among them are the 96 members of the United States Senate, perhaps the windiest and most tedious group of men in Christendom. If a senator were denied admission to the White House, the whole Senate would rise in indignation. And if the minister from Albania were kicked out, even the French and British ambassadors would join in protesting. Many of these gentlemen drop in, not because they have anything to say, but simply to prove to their employers or customers that they can do it. How long they stay is only partly determined by the president himself. Dr. Coolidge used to get rid of them by falling asleep in their faces. But that device is impossible to presidents with a more active interest in the visible world. It would not do to have them heaved out by the Secret Servicemen or by the White House police, or to insult and affront them otherwise, for many of them have wicked tongues. On 2 occasions, within historic times, presidents who were irritable with such bores were reported in Washington to be patronizing the jug, and it took a lot of fine work to put down the scandal. All day long, the Right Honorable Lord of us all sits listening solemnly to bores and quacks. Anon, a secretary rushes in with the news that some eminent movie actor or football coach has died, and the president must seize a pen and write a telegram of condolence to the widow. Once a year, he is repaid by receiving a cable on his birthday from King George. Such things are cherished by presidents, and they leave them, post-mortem, to the Library of Congress. Anon, there comes a day of public ceremonial and a chance to make a speech. Alas, it must be made at the annual banquet of some organization that is discovered at the last minute to be made up mainly of gentlemen under indictment, or at the tomb of some statesman who escaped impeachment by a hair. 20 million voters with IQs below 60 have their ears glued to the radio. It takes 4 days' hard work to concoct a speech without a sensible word in it. Next day, a dam must be opened somewhere. 4 senators get drunk and try to neck a lady politician built like an overloaded tramp steamer. The presidential automobile runs over a dog. It rains.